Awareness.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what's awareness, Brad?
Huh. Well, I think I alluded in the earlier part that the mainstream idea, so make these that makes this word synonymous with consciousness, and I
Hmm.
don't think so. I separate it, and some spiritual people don't, and it doesn't need to be separated, but then again, it does. And of course, what I'm suggesting here is that consciousness is the material aspect of things. It's operating the material, but you can take a step back into a different position and you can see the material operating. And so that's what the out of body uh, and astral travel idea is about. We'll get to NDEs here in a second. But that's what this is suggesting, is that there's something that can observe consciousness.
So to just clarify with you, you're saying that consciousness operates the material
Right.
and creates the material or plays a
It
role in
is the
creating the
material.
material.
It is the material in
Or
effect.
consciousness is the material. Okay.
Yep.
That takes it an even another level deeper.
Right. Right. We're not gonna talk about rocks in this one, but the suggestion is that even rocks have consciousness, just a different type
Hmm.
of consciousness, right?
Will not have consciousness, but are consciousness.
Oh, that's the correct way to say it. Yep. A little harder to grasp, but yeah, if we want to do our spiritual side of things, that's exactly right. So what did
Now
I say
you've
here?
you've said before to me that consciousness is life.
Yeah, I thought that was in this outline somewhere. I haven't seen it yet though. I was
I don't think so.
suggesting that you can't try to separate the two, and you can't do it, right? You can't find anything with life that doesn't have consciousness,
Hmm.
right? As hard as you think about it. And hopefully people are hearing this, heard my uh, podcast on viruses, which aren't what people say they are. But yeah, it's life and consciousness are effectively synonymous because you can't have one without the other.
Hmm.
So that's it.
And did you want to say more on this self-awareness point that's right
Yeah,
here?
right. So this in the materialist world, in the mainstream psychology, the way they differentiate humans from the animal kingdom, as a general rule, is they say that humans have self-awareness. So in other words, that you can be aware of this body that you call me, right? Whereas other animals can't really do that. To some degree, like chimpanzees and dolphins, and to some degree, even a dog can kind of do that, but not really. They don't really do that, and they suggest that is what sets humans apart from the animal kingdom. This idea of self-awareness. But what they're really pointing to, is this super consciousness, or this awareness that is aware of the consciousness, which is the body.
Hmm.
But because the two words have merged together and they mean the same thing, you got to go through a lot of iterations to make that point. So that's the witness for God idea. It's the witnessing position I mentioned earlier. Neutral observation is what the witnessing position is. So you're watching two people stand in front of you and argue, and you got no dog in the fight, and you don't think one's right and one's wrong, and you're just watching it. That's this witnessing position. Does
Hmm.
that make a little bit of sense?
Hmm.
I did the in the world but not of it part. So an even bigger idea, this is probably the big idea for this podcast, is that awareness actually is the precursor to consciousness. Now we're not going to get into I mean, we go way out there to talk about that, but that's what I'm going to suggest, is that the before consciousness was awareness. Any questions on that one? I think I cut some of that section
That is
out,
the question.
but
That's the
uh-huh,
question, right?
right.
uh, so I think what we've done so far is, we're not claiming that we've like perfectly, you know, defined and rationalized all this stuff or anything like that. But I think what we've gone from, what we've achieved here is that we started off with, this dictionary definition, yeah, that consciousness is the state of being conscious. It is awareness of one's own existence, sensations, thoughts, and surroundings. And we've pointed out how absolutely limited that is and how it's like, well, what? Right. And then, we've thrown a bunch of extra concepts into the mix and we've pointed at things in reality. So there's a whole bunch of stuff here that you can start to look at and just have a, lovely reflection and on all this stuff and dream about it and, you know, see if you can observe these things happening in your life.
Yeah, and in order to stick with that materialist, this last section I just closed on here, right? That the materialist view, you just have to ignore tens of thousands of examples, stories, explanations
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
things like astral travel, out of body, the Indian yogi Turiya state, and perhaps even bigger than all of those combined are what people today call NDEs or near death experiences. And there
Mm-hmm.
are just literally tens of thousands of stories out there, books. And I think there was even a credentialed Harvard guy that put his reputation on the line and obviously lost a lot of it because he went out to chase down these NDEs. And you read some of these stories and they are astonishing. That they cannot be explained in any other way than not all of them, but a lot of them can't be explained in any other way than this person was telling the truth, and they got into this Turiya state and saw and heard things that they shouldn't have been able to see or hear because they were on the operating table or their heart stopped beating or whatever the case was, and to just ignore those things or hand wave them away, that's willful ignorance right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a lot of respect for people who put themselves into that space. We got to ignore it. We can't explain it. Doesn't make any sense. Therefore, we're going to ignore it. But that's what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're left with. Those are your options. You can go with the materialist view and ignore 5,000-year-old wisdom that that's still active today in the spiritual circles, and tens of thousands of stories of people that say they can astral travel, say they can do out of bodies, say they've had a near death experience, and you can ignore all of that. Then you could stick with the materialist explanation, which in my mind isn't much of an explanation. It doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, so this has been a good discussion so far. We do have more content that we want to say, so we're going to call what we've done here part one. Some things we want to discuss in part two. We want to look at different levels of consciousness. For example, we want to explore this map of consciousness from David Hawkins. It goes from 0 to 1,000. That's super interesting. We also want to take a look at these concepts, conscience, like the difference between conscience and consciousness. So there's a lot more to cover. I think we can also look at things like how to become more conscious, and if that's a real thing, and if there's any value to it or anything like that, and what it involves and what it feels like. Anything you want to add to conclude, Brett?
No, I think that's an excellent place to wrap up this podcast, and we'll dive in a little bit deeper and wrap up with the topics you just mentioned on
Okay.
our next podcast.
Well, I think in that case, we could mention all of our products that we have on the mindblowenzone.com. If you go there and go to products, you'll see all three. Presently, we have three products, and there'll be more. But all of the training courses that we have are about, they're rooted in the idea that uh let's say that health and having a better experience of life is so far governed and taught by materialists, right? For example, we have a back pain one that's about how they're telling you to do physical material exercises and treat your body as this material thing and try to alter the body, right? Then we have one on weight loss. It's called conscious eating. And that's about how the material scientific worldview of weight loss is that it's all about this calories in, calories out, and you have to manage this scientific equation and you have to repress cravings and eat these good foods and not eat these bad foods and manage how much you eat, right? Whereas our thing is like, you have to look up here.